Welcome to Studio Visits with SJAMELAI, where I get to talk in depth with some of the most interesting contemporary photographers working today. I'm David Oresick, the Executive Director of SJAMELAI Center for Photography. You can visit us online at silvereye.org to learn more about our programs, and you can find a helpful glossary for all of these conversations. In this episode, I spoke with the winner of our 2021 Fellowship Prize, Sasha Phyars-Burgess. Sasha was born in Brooklyn to Trinidadian parents and raised in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. She graduated from Bard College in 2010. Her work has one foot in a traditional documentary practice and another foot headed in innovation, community building, and experimentation. The biography on her website simply states that she was born in 1988, that she is a Scorpio, Black, and alive. Her first monograph, Untitled, is available from Capricious Books and in the shop at SilverEye. This was such a fun conversation for me because Sasha is incredibly generous in the way she reflects on her work and her practice. We got to talk about how she grew and what she learned during the making of her Untitled project, and how she created lasting bonds with the community she photographed, as well as many other topics. Please enjoy this studio visit with Sasha Phyars-Burgess. Sasha Phyars-Burgess, welcome to Studio Visits with SilverEye.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, congratulations on winning Fellowship 21, and congratulations on your beautiful exhibition that just opened, which you haven't even seen yet because we're still in COVID times, but hopefully you can do it this summer.
Yes, thank you. It's been really cool. Thank you.
It's been really fun to work with, and I'm excited to share a lot of the conversations that we've been having over the past couple of months putting the show together with a wider audience. And, you know, the work that we're sharing here from the Untitled Project comes from the Austin neighborhood on the west side of Chicago. And maybe I just thought the place to start would be if you could share the story of how you ended up in Austin.
So in 2018, I applied for the Diane Daymeyer Fellowship for Photographic Arts and Social Justice. I think that's what the whole name was. But it's a fellowship that's between Columbia College of Chicago and Heartland Alliance, which is not a an anti-poverty based organization. And they're like a really large organization in Chicago. And I applied for this fellowship, which allowed me to propose a project to go to move to Chicago and shoot something, right? So it was $25,000. So I applied for it, and I had proposed this project about doing a project about gun violence in Chicago. It was like, I look back on this moment in retrospect and I feel mad corny. But
why? Tell me about why it feels corny in retrospect.
It feels like a very flattening way to think of a place. So yeah, I applied. I was lucky enough to get the fellowship. I moved to Chicago. Judy Natal at the time was the mentor. Like, Judy Natal at that time was working at Columbia College of Chicago. Right now she's professor emeritus, but she was working at Columbia College of Chicago, and she was the mentor. And this fellowship was essentially me doing photo stuff at Columbia College of Chicago, and then me doing Heartland Alliance, kind of like my own personal work, more like in Austin. And so that's how I ended up in the neighborhood.
I mean, I think it's so interesting, you know, that you sort of describe it as like your original project was kind of flattening, because your project is so rich and has so much depth. So can you talk a little bit more about like what you discovered? Like, what did you find when you began photographing in Austin? And like, how did that kind of, like, what was the difference between your expectations and what you actually found?
I went to Austin and I found people, which is like, really, it was a saddeningly humanizing moment in my life. Like, I don't really know how to explain this thing that happened, but I went to Austin and I found out people live here. And then I was like, what the fuck? Why do these people live like this? Because I didn't grow up I'm not from Chicago. Like, I think when I had proposed a project about doing gun violence It was kind of like an outsider's perspective of what you hear about a city, which is that like Chicago is the most violent place in America. It's Chirac, motherfucker. Like, you know, it was an idea that I had. I was naive.
Yeah.
I was naive, even as a Black person I was fucking Walker Evans having a moment where I was a middle-class Black person who grew up in a white area. This is very important to what ended up happening to me. So like in like what is Let Us Now All Praise Famous Men, him and James Atchie are like,
yeah,
he like has this whole conflict of interest in which he's like, and he's photographing white people. I had one of those moments. I got checked.
Yeah.
Austin checked the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so basically that's what happened. I got there, I got checked. And as I started reading, learning more, I was just observing, paying attention. And I was like, it's crazy that y'all did this to a group of people. Once I had learned and read and my own knowledge prior to coming there. Once I knew that, I couldn't come make a word about gun violence. Like, that's not what's really going on here. I mean, I should say that is what is going on there, but there's so much more. There's so much more.
Absolutely. Well, I think on so many levels, right? Like that experience that you're describing is the experience that a million thoughtful photographers have had, you know, because I think the camera is this tool that like can be a passport to look at other people and other places. And I think if you're like a thoughtful, caring person, you will check yourself, or you will be checked into understanding things more deeply and not stopping at the surface level of things. And you know, I know we've talked about like that sort of surface level interaction, which became about, you know, which was this interest in gun violence, which of course is not an insignificant problem, but you know, as you're saying, it's so much more than that. So this process of educating yourself and of learning more about this community and checking yourself led you to, you know, I think from your artist statement and from our conversations, to think a lot about these kind of systemic issues around poverty and race and land in Chicago. What could you describe what in your eyes were these more kind of systemic things that you discovered through this process?
Racism in America? Like, I don't even know how to begin. Y'all, racism is real and it has real effects and people are fucking dying. It's ugly as fuck. Like, I don't know what else to say. And I think I came to Austin and I saw how easy it was, how easy it can be. And I began to understand how easy it is for people, specifically white people, to turn their backs away from ugliness. And I think when you are a Black person in America, everything is so ugly all the time that like, you're just that much closer to death. But I think when you are a person whose livelihood is not predicated upon your disposal, and I think right now we're in a moment where everyone is realizing, oh shit, I'm disposable. And now y'all looking at Black people like, what's up, help us. But like, racism has real effects. And when you turn your backs away from ugliness, this is what happens.
This whole project, I think, rung really true to me because I mean, that everything you're saying rung really true to me because I lived in Chicago for almost 10 years. And I lived in, you know, moved in as a graduate student, moved into gentrifying neighborhoods and sort of knew because, you know, people would talk about the kind of the two cities of Chicago, the wealthy side and the poor side, the white side and the Black side. And how many, you know, that one could spend years of their life in their kind of sections, that, you know, the kind of white privileged sections of the city without having any reason to go west, you know, that it was really separated from any kind of a view or a daily experience for so much of the city. But I think enables this kind of systemic disinvestment and denial of services and like all these things that you bring up and you're talking and writing about this project.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to think about the process of photographing and thinking about using your camera to get at some of these issues and kind of learn about these people and tell their stories. I think that the thing that stands out to me right away about your project is the portraits and just like kind of these environmental portraits, right? Like people in their places, in their
Mm-hmm.
homes and places of business and outside in parks and on the street. How did you begin kind of thinking about making portraits of the people in this community?
Mm-hmm. Well, I should say that I I'll talk about the way that my fellowship allowed me to make portraits, because if I had come to Chicago on my own, like if I had just showed up in this neighborhood, like nobody would have given a shit about what I did. But because I came by way of this institution, and I think that is the thing that you get with institutions, I was able to like begin. Okay. So like once I began, I was set up in two different places. One place was called Mace Suites, which is a SRO, a single residency occupancy building that was in Austin. That was one place where I went. And then the other place that I went was called READI, which stands for Rapid Employment and Development Initiative, which is a program. I'll get into what both of those programs are about. But because I was linked into those two programs, I was able to like start meeting people. Okay, so at Mace Suites, what I did, I'm trying to be very specific because I teach, and I feel like I feel like students always ask questions about how I do things. So I'm trying to be like, this is exactly what I did. So,
I,
um,
I love the specificity. I mean, I think, just to kind of echo what you're saying, right? Like, I think the pictures feel really, really specific, right? They feel like
yeah, they're so specific.
individual people with lives and personalities, and I think that's the power of the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, like the way that I was like able to do it was that when I was at Mace Suites, I like walked into this building. They were just like, yeah, Sasha, you can. I had looked online because they were like, what do you want to do? You had to like figure out what you wanted to do, blah, blah, blah. So I like looked and I like found some places. And also I first got set up with READI, but the truth is the longer I was at READI, the more I was like, there's a housing issue here. And I knew I needed to go into the house. Like I needed to like find out about housing. So that's when I ended up at Mace Suites. And at Mace Suites, basically, it's a people that have recently experienced homelessness or are looking for homes. They are able to get they're able to live there for like a reduced rent rate. And so Miss Sharon Tenard was the woman who was the caseworker inside of that building. And Miss Sharon, I came in there and I was like, hey. She was like, I like told her, okay, I want to do some things in here and eventually take some photos. She was like, what do you want to do? I was like, what if I just set up in the lobby twice a week? Because I knew I had to do like community. They call this thing, quote unquote, social practice, but I don't know how I feel about that. But that's what they call this thing that I did. That's what they call it. It has a name, And
yeah, of course.
So I just went and I was just like in the lobby 2 days a week, and I would just do dumb shit in the lobby. I'd have like magazines and I'd be like, do you want me to make you an inspiration board? And people would be like, what? I'd be like, what do you want? It'd be like the new year. And I'd be like, what do you want? Do you just want like, let's make you like a weight loss thing? And they're like, sure, whatever. Or, like you want to make money. Let's just like make a green thing with money all over it. And they'd be like, sure. People would sit with me. And then like, during Thanksgiving, I'd do photos in the lobby and I'd print photos out. I give people photos. It ended up becoming like a little community. Like we would just do these things and people would come and show up. And so then that's how I started getting to know people. So I was probably in Mace Suites. I was in Mace Suites for like 8 months or so, 8+ months. Just like, and for the first couple of months, it was just me sitting there. I kind of knew because I had done shit like this on my own in the past. I kind of knew. I was like, girl, just go. I was like, if you get no photos, you get a photo. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, just sit your ass in the building.
How did people respond to you? This kind of outsider with these,
weird projects in the lobby? Like what was their response?
I think they were wary at first, as they should have been. They were wary. They didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. They didn't know what was going. Like it took time. We each of us, it's a two-way street. Trust is a two-way street. I think I didn't even really realize that until I was there for a long time. Like I had to relax, they had to relax. We had to just kind of randomly talk to each other, but that takes time. And that was and I had time. That's what the fuck I was there for. Like I had time, you know what I mean? So I just let it happen. And then after a while, I just started taking photos. I would be like, I would ask certain people and I would just I'd be like, hey, can I take your photo? People that came up and seemed more receptive to me, I would just ask, can I take your photo? Can I take your photo? And then once they got the photos back, other people in the building were like, oh, you can take my photo, And some people I just like this photo that you're showing right now is Maurice. Mm-hmm. He was just like a younger guy in the building. And he just we would just chill and talk. Like I met people in there that were just like, we would talk. After a while, it was like, oh, I'm just gonna go there and hang out. Like I made friends. Like there's people I hang out with still. Like the first photo you showed, that was of Cherish. Cherish was the daughter of a community organizer in Austin. Her name is Zerlina Smith, who ran for alderman as part of the Green Party. You know what I'm saying? Like a Black woman running as part of the Green Party for alderman in Chicago. Like Zerlina's crazy. It's amazing. Like I mean that like she's mad intense. She's amazing. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like I was able to meet Zerlina through Heartland stuff. But then eventually, because Austin is both the largest geographic place in Chicago and it has the largest population of people, but at the same time, somehow all of these people I ended up being connected like with everyone in a really weird way. Because everyone knew each other ultimately through random things, Mm-hmm. So it was like another interesting thing that ended up happening was that people were showing up. Like,
I just want to reiterate to like every photo student who might listen to this, and just I think how important and the richness of this project like comes from that, like just spending 8 months, before you're really kind of like quote unquote starting the real work, or like just to because I mean, how many times have we seen people just sort of jump into picture making and not put that kind of thought and care into relationships and friendships, into learning the community? And I think that to me, makes all the difference in the world. And I remember just looking at these pictures with the fellowship jurors, and they stand out. And I think it's because you can tell there's that trust, there's that relationship, there's a connection with the subjects where they've opened themselves up to you because they know you. Mm-hmm. Well, you also mentioned that so you talked about the May Sweets photos, and you mentioned the READI photos was kind of a different situation. What was tell me about taking the READI pictures.
So READI was the first organization that Heartland paired me with because I had proposed the project idea. And in retrospect, I do not regret proposing the project idea about gun violence in Chicago, but I am, I have my qualms about it now. So READI basically stands for Rapid Employment and Development Initiative, and it's a program that takes young men that live in the geographically hottest areas of Chicago, the areas that are experiencing the most gun violence, and they put them in this program where they get job training and cognitive behavioral therapy. So they have 3 different sites. One is in the South. I think maybe there's Englewood, North Lawndale, and Austin. That's where they are. And I went to all 3 sites. I visited all of them. And Austin just stuck. I don't know. I thought I was like, oh, well, I hear a lot of projects about the South Side. Maybe I'll go to the West Side. I don't know that much about the West Side. So that's why I stayed in Austin, and I don't regret it. It was great. So what I did, like how I did the thing in May Suites, because the fellowship was my whole year was devoted to this. So I like made it my job. So I would go to READI 2 days a week. So this is pre-COVID days, right? So like I could easily be in people's grills like this, but I was going there 2 days a week and I ran a media group. Oh my God. And it was basically like, I was like, we're gonna make a movie. And everybody was like, okay. And the dudes were like mad about it. Like, they were like, yeah, we're gonna make a movie. And we made a movie. Like there was a whole, this is me simplifying it because it was like way more shit that happened. But like, basically we made a movie. It kind of got like halfway finished, halfway there. I screened it, but right now I'm working with it and kind of trying to make it something else. But basically we made a movie together. And so I would just hang out with these dudes like 2 days a week, early in the morning. It was like from 9 to 10:30. And we would just like, I would just give them cameras. And then, so this was the first year. But then what ended up happening was that I realized that I wanted to stay in Chicago longer because I think I just was like, I want to keep making work. So I ended up staying in Chicago 3 years. And so this project is like, there's like, you know, those 3 years. But yeah, this person is Javon. He was like one of the guys in the program and he was really nice and he was really kind. And I just took his photograph. And it was the same. Like I would just be like, can I take your photographs? But it was like in between all this other stuff. Like I would say the photographs were secondary to the movie being made. The movie was like the point of me being there. The camera just randomly would come out and they'd be like, I would take some pictures.
Can I ask what the movie was about?
So it's actually really, they wrote a movie about themselves. Actually, I'm gonna say this out loud. If anybody is interested in buying the rights to this movie, like y'all would be doing these dudes a solid. Like it was so interesting. They wrote a movie about themselves, but it was called Code Switch. And basically it was about their lives and about like, but they, of course, they like modified themselves. And I met this guy there, his name is Steve. And he was like, he's really sharp. I still talk to him too. And they would just be like, okay, we want this, this, and this to happen. Basically, it was about a group of friends that hit a lick and that what happened to the friends after they hit the lick. And some of them went to jail, some of them died, like some of them stayed in the program because all the dudes basically that heard about the lick, like they wrote it about, the premise of the movie was this group of friends are in a program like READI, but not READI, you know, READI adjacent. And they overhear one of because the interesting thing about this program is it was like taking dudes from the street that had like rival gangs and shit, and they were all in one place. So they actually really had to build this brotherhood there. But then you never really knew who was an op, like dead ass, because how could you know? Like some people were in there for genuine shit and maybe some people weren't. It was a really good way to get people off the streets. And ultimately, I think it actually worked really well. I think it works really well, but who fucking knows? But so they had this idea like, oh, what if you heard somebody's situation? What would happen? And so when they overheard the situation, which was one of their dudes in the program that wasn't part of the crew was like, yo, I got 10 bricks in the garage. I'm gonna come and get it. And they overhear it and they go and get the lick, they get the drugs, they get all that stuff. And then, you know, what happens afterwards? They're like running away with it. The cops come. They made a movie about their life. And while we were filming it, all this like the cops would actually they were filming the scene where they were like running. We were like not doing anything. It would be all this funny, ironic shit would happen. We were filming the scene where they were like fake running out with the bag. Yeah. And what ended up happening was the cops, I'm like, listen, like the cops came and they pulled up. We recorded this because we had cameras. So they recorded everything. It was like them recording stuff and me trying to like yell at them and make them do what they were supposed to do. But they were like, the camera was everywhere. So they recorded the police pulling up and being like, hey, what's wrong? What's going on here? What's going on? And it was like, you think we're doing something, but nothing is actually happening. And when the real shit is happening, where the fuck are you at? You're not there. What the fuck? Why are you here right now? We're making a movie. Go away.
I mean, that's so amazing. I mean, this is really like, I think you told me some of this stuff for this project before, but, I haven't dug too deep in the details. I think it's so amazing and so fascinating that you're like using these really creative projects and giving people tools to tell their own stories and talk about their own lives as a way into this community, or to make your connections with this community, to make your friends and relationships here.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to think, like, it sounds so clinical when you say it like that.
Well, I'm the curator. I boil things down.
I have things I want to share with them. I like doing shit. Like, I'm interested in shit. Like, everybody, and this is the real crime here, actually. And this is the problem, that it took me circumnavigating a bunch of systems to be able to do something like this. I'm sorry, this should be existing there already. And no tea, no shade. I'm really happy that I'm an artist that can get money to like do shit with my friends, but why does this not exist there already? They should be doing this. Like, I met dudes in there that were in and out of jail that were smart as hell. That wasn't right. I felt like it's both funny and not. Sorry, it's just like, because the tone shifts really quickly. It's like, yeah, I got to do all this stuff, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm actually really mad that this person who's like me, when I was 15 years old, and I remember what this was like because of where I grew up, I knew how they were getting treated in the school because I saw my friends get treated like that. I'm like, it's really sad that my dumb ass, like my goofy ass, for real, is the person that is bringing these tools in here. I literally would give them a camera and like be like, oh, go, it was really awesome. It was so amazing. I had a great experience. But when I look at it retrospectively, I'm like, I'm just saying that these people should be filmmakers without me. I'm just saying they should be photographers without me. I'm just saying that they should have all access to the same tools that I had. And I shouldn't have to like do a weird dance to get it there.
I mean, here. I think about the kind of how kind of undervalued creativity and art is throughout our society, but I think that's one of many case studies is that disinvested communities are subject to creative poverty in addition to other kinds of poverty, and like they're no one, art and creativity is thought as so disposable, but really having the tools and having the power to tell your story and to express yourself is like essential to live. I mean, in my opinion.
I agree with you.
So I think you kind of sharing some of those creative experiences. I mean, it is kind of silly and it is kind of goofy in some ways, but I think it is like very, I mean, you just can't like say enough about how important it is. And if you can be the person to come in there, and of course you're right, there should be more people and this should be happening all the time, but just to say like, hey, your story is worth telling. And that leads to you being able to tell your story too, with the pictures you're making. I don't know. I mean, it's a really moving thought for me. I guess maybe, another question I was thinking about is that there's so many moments in your photographs where you're kind of taking pictures of place and like thinking about these details. One of the photos in the show that I really love, and it just feels like a really classic photo, but it's just like curtains somewhere kind of in the READI, it's under the kind of READI label, kind of light coming through curtains, which is I always associate a photograph like this as like, it's such a photographer's photograph, just like watching the way light is passing through fabric. But there's this and there's so many other kind of beautiful detail photographs. How are you thinking about showing the place, without the people?
I guess I was thinking of it kind of like from the perspective of like, if you were sitting in this room at this time of day, what would this look like? That like of just people being in the building all the time, or just being somewhere all the time, you know, like, because I guess the mundane is also important, like the kind of monotony. I think that's the word that I want to use, monotony of like this again, this again,
Yeah.
this again, both with the light streaming through the windows and with like, you know, the death or the new life of someone. Like there's also like, yeah, there's like children, and there's people in the images that have passed. There's, you know, there's people in the images that just kind of like, and the beat goes on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing I would add to those kind of moments, like the curtains or the cup of water, or so many of these, like someone's hand is like, I don't know, for me, I kept thinking about like how you were looking at these details and thinking, this is a beautiful place, or at least there's a lot of beauty in this place. And I think, you know, like, you know, many photographers before you have just sort of like done this thing that I love about photography, which is like showing us the beauty in places we either don't think are beautiful or just aren't thinking about at all.
Mm-hmm.
In these moments that can be really transporting, you know, and especially I think, like you were saying a little bit before, the photographs of children or of families together
Mm-hmm.
are very, I don't know, I mean they're really like the Henry and the May Sweets photos is one of my favorite photos in the project
Oh,
too.
really?
Like, it's just like, it's just such a, you know, he's in such a genuine like laugh for a moment, just kind of tilting his head back, sitting on the windowsill,
Mm-hmm.
kind of framed with the windows kind of fogging up. It's just got all these like wonderful details, but it's like, it's the kind of photo you can't like look at it and not kind of smile.
Yeah, he's so cute.
You know, one of the other things I wanted to ask you about was a couple of the photos. You know, I think this was kind of late in our process of thinking about the show
Mm-hmm.
and thinking about what kind of photos were going to be in the show, was that you decided you wanted to add some photographs that had the kind of quote like mistakes or imperfections all
Mm-hmm.
around them.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm thinking of this photograph, which is Miss Sharon from July 4th. They've got scratches and fingerprints and light leaks and just kind of other things that would sort of, you would normally think of, or just like part of shooting large format photography. You know, mistakes happen, it's pretty normal.
Mm-hmm.
But you decided you wanted to bring these photos into the edit for this show and leave the kind of mistakes in them. Why did you want to do that?
Mm-hmm. This is another moment where I'm like, shout out to SAIC, the students at SAIC, because I was teaching and I kept noticing they were like, they were obsessed with dust. They were obsessed with like all of these things that I had been taught were wrong. they were like loving they loved their mistakes, but they weren't seeing them as mistakes, like, you know, the way that I was taught. And I assume probably you were taught like, just the negative. There can't be any edge. What, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is not contrasty enough. There's, you know, they didn't have that thing that I had. And so seeing them make work and like using their overexposures and stuff like that, I was like, you know what? Let me do this. And then I was like, the more I started looking at it, I was like, okay, these are kind of beautiful when you put them against the ones that are not, you know, like this. Like, I think if I had tried to do something like this, it wouldn't have happened. But like, because I had already developed all the photos already. And I should say that some of the ones that have a lot of like, some of it's just like heat exposure, some of it's my sweat, some of it's me. I was shooting on July 4th of 2019, and it was just a really hot day, and I'm shooting 4x5 film, and I'm, you know, I only got a certain amount of 4x5 film holders. So halfway through, I got to take all the holders out. I got to put them, and I was just like in my car shaking, hot as hell. So some of those things happened in, you know, doing in the taking of the photographs. And then I'm also processing in my house. So there's me being dumb. I just do dumb shit because I'm in my house. So, there's those mistakes. And then those, usually I don't like to use those things. I really don't, I don't know. It wasn't something I was looking for. But then once I started looking at it, I was like, okay, I see what it does.
Yeah. I think originally when you proposed it, I was just like thinking about it in terms of it was a way to show your presence even more in these photographs, right? Like the kind of the mistakes of the maker, or like the hand of the photographer in there. And I thought that was really interesting. But the more I started thinking about it, the more I began to read it as kind of like a metaphor for your whole, or at least for part of your experience. And specifically, I mean that part where like you were talking about, like you came in kind of naive, or you came in thinking that the issue was like one thing. But then you just kind of like you stayed for a long time, and you just kept learning and learning and making more connections and learning and learning. And I think there's like your openness to your own fallibility, right? Like your openness to the idea that like you could learn and improve, and like through this kind of art project make mistakes and learn from them, I think is really like really powerful for me. I think it's a thing that people are generally pretty bad at and pretty not open to. And I think artists especially, could stand to do it a lot more often. And I began thinking about these photos, like, kind of using these kind of mistakes in the processing or the shooting or whatever as a way of kind of acknowledging your process of making mistakes and learning, and your fallibility, and your like kind of seeking to improve and learn more and kind of understand better and do better. Which, I mean, maybe that's a lot of projection on my point, but
I mean, perhaps it is, but I think it's a good one. Like, I'm a human being, and I think that, like, I think I try my best. So I'm always trying to think of things both like I'm a human being, which is to say, like, I am endlessly open to mistakes. Like, the improvement will be until I'll be on my deathbed, like, what else can I do better? You know what I'm saying? Like, just for the like kicks, just to be doing some shit. Like,
I know what you're saying, but I think a lot of human beings aren't open to their mistakes.
I mean, yes, that's true. Yes. But I think I've been thinking of I don't know. I don't know how to, it's like, these mistakes are not the big fuck ups in my life. Like, no, seriously. And I think I say that with like, I say that both to like have a bit of perspective about both what I'm doing itself and about making work in general. Like, and I'm not trying to make this sound simple. I'm not trying to make this sound easy. This is just with time. I just have learned to be like, there are some things that are grave and there are some things that are not. And I think this is also because of my experience on planet Earth as a Black person. I'm like, there is some big shit in the world, like heavy shit, scary shit. Like, my girl, if you expose a sheet of film, who gives a fuck? If you know what I'm saying? There's some real shit going on.
Right,
I like don't even know how to like, and also I think in the idea of being able to think of myself as a human, again, as a Black person in America that has been 3/5 of a piece of whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, I get to make a mistake, God damn it. I get to expose a sheet of film. And sometimes it looks good and sometimes it looks not good. I have to be more honest with myself about it too. Like, I can't just think everything I do is great because I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can make mistakes and be like, okay, that's cute and that's not that cute. I can, whatever. I'm just out here living.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that that process of honesty and self-reflection. I mean, to me, that's like the essence of just like what art making is just like trying to be as honest with yourself as you possibly can. I wanted to ask about this portrait in particular, this photo, Jamela, which is, I think, the only nude, partial nude in the series, and has this very classical kind of like Madonna kind of pose with this like really beautiful light streaming in. It was one of the photos that stood out immediately to me, just as like really striking, and just a side of a person that, again, spoke to that kind of like trust and like that real relationship there. But can you tell me about your thoughts making this photo?
Yeah, I just I did want to make one. Sometimes I do feel qualms with myself about showing it, but she was comfortable with it. I was comfortable with it. Also, her partner, her boyfriend Steve, was there. Like, and I was just like, I want to make a really beautiful photo. I just saw the light coming in, and we were all chilling there, and his kids were there, and like, I was like, yeah, I want to take this photo, and she was like, okay. And I just hope it's like I think she thinks it's a beautiful photo. I think it's a beautiful photo, and like, it's to show all the sides. There's a lot of sides.
Yeah, I mean, I concur. It's a beautiful photo. I don't think anyone could say otherwise. Is there any other pictures, like any other people who were really impactful for you through this process that you'd want to speak about?
Everybody. This is like yeah, that sounds so like, where did you grow up, David?
I grew up in Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay. So you like know on the hip hop radios and stuff how people do shout outs. This is when I get to do my shout outs.
Yeah. In Pittsburgh, they called it the roll call.
Yeah. Okay, I want to give a shout out to the people at READI, I'm not going to name everyone's names, but just the staff at READI for just letting me be in that building and do random shit. And I know now in retrospect, they had no idea what I was doing. And I just really want to thank them for just being like, go ahead. You know what I'm saying? And then like letting me come back again and again and again. And yeah, I want to thank Zerlina Smith, Miss Sharon, everybody at May Sweets. I want to give a shout out. I want to give a rest in peace to Gerald, rest in peace to Eugene, rest in peace to Terry. Man, I want to give a shout out to, damn, I didn't prepare my list. So that's it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I just love that you're so like, the idea that there's so much more to a photography project than the photographer, which sounds like so fucking obvious, right?
Yeah.
But I really don't think that's the way a lot of people think about it. And I love how open you are with kind of sharing that like this is a community project. And I know you don't like the term social practice, and I kind of agree with you. I'm not wild about it either.
I don't know how I feel about it. I think I don't know if that's what I'm doing. I think that I'm doing a thing and and that is the name for it, but I don't know if that's what I'm doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like I would have to think about this more too, but I agree with you. That doesn't seem like the best way to describe what you're doing. Because what I'm thinking about what you're doing is about community, is about intuition, is about relationships, is about creativity and experimentation, and like sharing ideas and like asking who wants to like basically like who wants to play in the sandbox with you. Like,
yeah, but I suppose in some ways that is what social practice is supposed to be. So I guess that's what I'm doing, but like, I just don't know.
We'll have to ask a social practice art historian. I'm probably a little out of my depth here, but whatever you want to call it, I think it's important and I love it. And I love that you're doing it. I wanted to ask one last question, which was just about the title of the project and how you chose it, because I think it's something that's just been really interesting to me. It's called Untitled and Yet to Be Determined, and then it has the kind of exact, precise longitude and latitude of of the Austin neighborhood. Why did you want to have this kind of clinical, geographic, kind of scientific way of locating the neighborhood in your title?
I think for me, it was like a way to both pinpoint like if you ever wanted to come and find this place, you could do it. But also, I think I didn't want to give it a real name. I think I am hesitant. Even when you name a thing Untitled, it's still titled, but maybe I wanted to put my like hesitancy, like make it clear, like untitled and yet to be determined. I don't think I'm the one that determines it either. So untitled and yet to be determined, but here is the place that I went, and here are the people that I saw, and here are the things that I learned.
Yeah. Sasha, thank you so much for sharing this work with us today in this conversation and in our gallery. And just we're really, really grateful and happy to have the work here.
Yes, thank you very much again. Thank you for having me.